It was raining that night, the kind of relentless rain that makes the whole world look like it's crying. Amir sat behind the wheel of his dented old Toyota, staring at the meter light flickering faintly. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, while a faded photograph of his daughter, Miriam, smiled back from the dashboard. She was 8, with a missing front tooth and eyes that carried the light of a better tomorrow. But tomorrow always seemed so far away for Amir. Rent was overdue, his daughter's school had sent another warning letter, and his ex-wife's lawyer was demanding money he didn't have. The night air was thick with hopelessness until his phone buzzed with a message that would change his life forever. A private booking. $800 for one night. Pick up a VIP at the Pearl Grand Hotel and drive her to Islamabad. No questions asked. No stops. Just the road, the silence, and the money that could keep his daughter in school for another month. Amir hesitated. Big money like that usually came with trouble, but when he looked at Miriam's picture again, he whispered to himself, "For you, my little girl." If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unseen miracles life sends when we least expect them, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life inspired stories that touch the heart. When Amir reached the hotel, he didn't expect the VIP to be a young woman. She stood beneath the grand arch, holding a small suitcase, her expensive coat shielding her from the rain. She didn't look like the kind of person who belonged to that world of luxury. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying, and her hands trembled slightly as she opened the car door. Amir got out quickly, taking her bag and opening the passenger door with a respectful nod. She thanked him in a soft, almost broken voice. He noticed she wore no jewelry except a thin gold bracelet. Her name, according to the booking, was Ms. Aisha. The first hour of the journey was silent. The highway stretched ahead, dark and endless. The rhythmic hum of the tires against wet asphalt was the only sound between them. Amir's mind wandered, wondering who she was, why she was paying so much, and what could drive a person to travel in the dead of night, alone and crying. But his years as a driver had taught him one thing: sometimes silence was the safest language. Halfway through the journey, she spoke suddenly, startling him. "Do you have children?" she asked. Her voice carried that quiet sadness that only people who've lost something understand. Amir smiled faintly and said, "Yes, a daughter. She's my whole world." There was a pause, long and heavy. Then she said, "You're lucky." Those two words hit him harder than he expected. He glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were wet again. She looked out the window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass, and whispered, "I had a little boy. He would have been 10 today." The silence that followed was louder than thunder. Amir didn't know what to say. Her words sank into his heart like stones dropped in still water. He wanted to ask what happened but didn't dare. Yet, she continued on her own, as if she had carried that story too long to keep it in anymore. She told him about a car accident 3 years ago. Her son, Hamza, had been in the back seat when a drunk driver ran a red light. She survived. He didn't. Since that day, her world had gone cold. The house, the laughter, the dreams, all buried with that tiny body in a small white coffin. Amir gripped the steering wheel tighter, fighting the lump in his throat. He imagined losing Miriam, her laugh, her drawings on the wall, her "Good night, Baba." The thought alone made his chest ache. He whispered a prayer for the woman sitting behind him, for her broken heart, and for every parent who had loved and lost. Aisha continued talking, not like someone seeking sympathy, but like someone trying to breathe after being underwater too long. She spoke about guilt, about nights when she'd sit in Hamza's room smelling his old blanket, about the silence that screamed louder than any sound. "I used to think," she said, her voice trembling, "that maybe God made a mistake keeping me alive instead of him." Amir's eyes blurred. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, but his throat refused to work. So, he did what he could. He listened. As dawn approached, they stopped at a roadside tea stall. Aisha insisted on buying him a cup of tea. The shop owner, an old man with kind eyes, greeted them warmly. The air smelled of chai, diesel, and wet earth. For the first time that night, Amir saw her smile, a faint, fragile smile, like sunlight sneaking through a storm. "You're a good listener," she said quietly. "Most people try to fix sadness. You just let it exist." Amir shrugged humbly. Sometimes, that's all it needs, he replied. When they resumed the journey, something had shifted in the car. The tension was still there, but softer, like grief learning to breathe again. Aisha asked about Maryam, and Amir told her everything. How his wife had left when the money ran out, how he worked night after night to give his daughter a normal life, how he still read bedtime stories over the phone even when he couldn't be home. Aisha listened intently, her eyes glistening. "You're a good father," she said. "Don't ever doubt that." The road wound through misty hills now. The morning light painted everything gold. Aisha leaned her head against the window, tears quietly streaming again. "I used to think rich people have it all," Amir said softly. "But tonight I learned pain doesn't care how much money you have." She smiled faintly. "And kindness doesn't either," she replied. A few miles before Islamabad, Aisha asked him to take a detour to a quiet graveyard near the edge of town. Amir parked under a tree while she walked ahead, carrying a small bouquet of white lilies. He watched from a distance as she knelt beside a tiny grave, her shoulders trembling, lips moving in silent prayer. The early morning breeze carried the faint scent of flowers and rain. Amir felt something in him crack open, not from sadness alone, but from witnessing the kind of love that never dies. When she returned, her face looked strangely peaceful. "Thank you," she said, handing him an envelope. "You've done more for me tonight than you'll ever know." He tried to refuse it, but she insisted. "You earned this. And more." Her voice softened. "You reminded me that there's still goodness in the world." Amir drove her to a large house in Islamabad's diplomatic enclave. Before she stepped out, she turned and said something that froze him completely. "I know what it's like to raise a child alone," she began. "My husband left after Hamza died. I thought I'd never feel love again. But tonight, seeing your dedication, hearing about your daughter, it made me realize something. I want to help you and your little girl." She handed him a card. "I run a foundation for single parents and orphan children. Come see me tomorrow. Don't say no." He tried to speak, but his voice broke. She smiled through her tears and added, "And please tell Maryam that somewhere in heaven, a little boy named Hamza is proud of her father." When Amir returned home that morning, Maryam ran into his arms, laughing, her tiny hands clutching his neck. He held her tighter than ever before. He didn't tell her everything, just that he'd met a kind lady who loved children very much. That evening, out of curiosity and hope, he visited the address Aisha had given him. It was indeed a charitable organization, one that provided education, housing, and healthcare for single-parent families. She was there, greeting children with warmth in her eyes. When she saw Amir, she smiled and said, "I told you to come." From that day on, Amir's life began to change in ways he never imagined. Aisha helped enroll Maryam in a good school, arranged for medical support, and even found Amir a job managing the foundation's transport services. But what touched him most wasn't the money or the job, it was the friendship that grew between two broken souls who healed each other's scars through kindness. Over time, Amir learned that Aisha had found new purpose in helping others, that Hamza's memory lived on through every smile she brought to another child's face. And Maryam adored her, often calling her Auntie Aisha. Their small, patchwork family grew together, not by blood, but by shared pain, compassion, and love reborn from lost years later. At Maryam's graduation ceremony, Aisha stood beside Amir, clapping with tears in her eyes as the young woman accepted her diploma. She leaned over and whispered, "See, Amir? You did it. You gave her the life she deserves." Amir looked at her, his voice thick with emotion. "No," he said softly. "We did it." If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe to the channel for more real stories that remind us of humanity's quiet miracles.